What if the person you most need to forgive is not the woman who gave birth to you, but the mother who lives in your own mind? Not the external figure you see in old photographs or family memories, but the inner image that has taken root deep in your unconscious and continues to shape how you feel, how you love, and how you see yourself. In this video, I want to invite you into a different way of understanding healing. Because real healing is not about changing your mother or waiting for her to finally become the person you always needed. Real healing begins when you start transforming the mother you carry inside. That inner mother image that still speaks to you, still judges you, still comforts you, or sometimes still abandons you, even when the actual relationship may have ended years ago. From a Jungian perspective, the mother is not just a person. She is an archetype, a powerful, universal pattern that influences your sense of self, your emotional development, and your capacity to live freely as who you really are. This means that what you're struggling with today is not just the past. It's not only old memories stored somewhere in a box. It is an invisible inner structure that continues to shape your reactions, your choices, your relationships, and even the tone in which you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. That is why you can move to another city, stop talking to your family, build a completely different life on the outside, and yet still feel like a small child on the inside, still waiting for someone to finally say, "You are enough. You are safe. You are loved." Carl Gustav Jung called this dynamic the mother complex. And it's very important to understand. The mother complex is not about blaming your mother, turning her into a villain, or using psychology as a weapon. It is about recognizing how deeply the psychological traces of the mother live on inside you. These traces are like emotional fingerprints, shaping the way you perceive yourself and the world, long after childhood is over. Maybe you grew up with a mother who was critical, distant, overwhelmed, or emotionally unavailable. Maybe she was loving but inconsistent. Maybe she was physically present, but emotionally absent. Whatever your story is, your nervous system learned to adapt. It built patterns, rules, and expectations to survive. Those patterns do not stay in the past. They become the unseen script guiding your adult life. Think about your reactions today. Maybe you feel extremely sensitive to criticism, even when someone means well. A simple comment from your partner or boss can feel like an attack on your entire worth. Maybe you find it almost impossible to receive love or kindness without suspicion. Someone compliments you, and immediately a voice inside says they don't really mean it. Or maybe you live in the opposite extreme, constantly searching for approval, over-explaining yourself, working harder than everyone else just to feel okay, chasing every little sign that you are accepted, chosen, or valued. These are not just personality traits. They are often the echo of old relationship patterns that have been written into your nervous system, like lines of code in an operating system you didn't choose. Even if your mother is no longer alive, her emotional echo can still live inside you. The way she looked at you or avoided looking at you. The way she hugged you tightly or never hugged you at all. The way she praised you only when you succeeded, or the way she made you feel like nothing you did was ever enough. All of this feeds into the basic questions that shape a human life. Am I worthy? Am I lovable? Do I have a right to exist as I am? When love is conditional. I love you when you're quiet, successful, helpful, pretty, obedient. A child learns that love must be earned, that value is something fragile that can be taken away at any moment. When there is emotional neglect, when feelings are ignored or minimized, a child learns that their inner world doesn't matter, that their needs are too much, that their pain is a burden. As adults, we often think we're fighting with our mother, or with our partner, or with our job, or with the world. But very often, we are actually fighting with the image we carry inside, that internalized voice, that old emotional program, that inner figure that keeps repeating the same messages. You might think you're arguing with your partner, but inside, you're actually arguing with a part of you that learned long ago. No one really stays. No one really loves me without conditions. You might think you're angry at your boss, but in reality, you're reliving the helplessness of a child who could never satisfy the expectations of the adults around them. To realize that there is this invisible enemy, this unconscious structure, is the first step toward freedom. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You cannot heal a wound you keep denying exists. In Jungian psychology, we talk about archetypes, not as individual people, but as universal patterns. Archetypes are like deep templates of human experience, inherited through the collective unconscious. The mother archetype is one of the most powerful. In its most balanced and integrated form, the mother archetype represents nourishment, protection, safety, and a sense of belonging. It is the inner feeling of, I am held, I am allowed to be, I have a place in this world. But when this archetype is wounded, distorted, or not fully integrated, it can turn into something very different inside you. Instead of a nurturing inner mother, you may feel ruled by a controlling, critical, or suffocating inner voice. Instead of warmth, you find judgment. Instead of comfort, you find shame. Over time, this inner mother, this internalized version of how you were treated and what you witnessed, stops sounding like your mother. It becomes the way you speak to yourself. You no longer need someone else to criticize you. You do it automatically. You no longer need someone else to withdraw love. You withdraw it from yourself every time you make a mistake. You might hear that voice in moments like these. When you forget something important, when you say the wrong thing, when you fail to meet your own impossibly high standards. A quiet whisper inside might say, how could you be so stupid? Or of course you messed it up. You always do. That is the mother complex at work. The archetype has turned inward and become part of your inner dialogue. Naturally, this inner structure does not stay confined to your inner world. It spills over into your relationships, especially romantic ones. Without realizing it, you may start expecting your partner to act like a parent, to heal your childhood, to fix your old wounds, to give you the unconditional love you never received. You might find yourself feeling intense panic or rage when they are busy, distracted, or simply human. You might interpret small misunderstandings as huge rejections. You might cling too tightly or withdraw too quickly because your nervous system is not reacting to the present moment. It is reacting to an old pattern of abandonment, criticism, or emotional distance. The problem is not that you are too emotional or too needy. The problem is that your inner child is still trying to resolve something that happened long ago, using the people in your present as stand-ins for the figures of your past. When you carry unmet needs from childhood, you may unconsciously demand that your partner becomes the mother or father you never had. You might expect them to always understand you without you needing to speak. You might secretly hope they will never get tired, never fail you, never say no. When they inevitably do, because they are human, the old story is triggered. I knew it. I'm not important. I'm not lovable. Everyone leaves. The reality is that your partner is not the problem. The deeper problem is that your inner world is still organized around past wounds. You are asking today's relationships to repair yesterday's fractures, but without ever consciously acknowledging those fractures. That is a weight no partner can carry for long. At this point, another powerful idea comes in from the work of Bert Hellinger, the concept of invisible loyalty. Invisible loyalty means that deep in the unconscious, a child may form a silent vow. I must stay loyal to my parents' fate. You may believe, without ever saying it out loud, that being happier than your mother would be a kind of betrayal, that having more love, more success, more freedom than she had means abandoning her. So you unconsciously sabotage yourself. Just when a relationship becomes really healthy, you pull away. Just when your career is about to flourish, you procrastinate, make mistakes, or choose situations that keep you small. You may find yourself repeating the same types of relationships, choosing partners who cannot love you, or recreating financial struggles that feel familiar. On the surface, it looks like bad luck. But beneath the surface, there's a child part of you that whispers, if my mother suffered, who am I to be happy? If she was alone, maybe I should be alone too. If she felt trapped, maybe I should never feel completely free. Sometimes this loyalty shows up as imitation. You might repeat your mother's patterns of sacrifice, martyrdom, or silent suffering, calling it love. You might take on too much responsibility, carry everyone's problems, and tell yourself, this is what a good person does. This is what a loving person does. But this is not love. This is a psychological prison. You're not actually helping your mother or honoring her pain by repeating it. You're simply abandoning yourself in the same way you felt abandoned. Invisible loyalty can also keep you tied to destructive relationships, addictions, or self-neglect, because part of you believes that stepping into joy and strength would mean leaving your family behind. And so you stay small, confused, and exhausted, wondering why life isn't moving forward, even as you are unconsciously holding the brakes. Real healing begins not when you repeat your mother's fate, but when you honor her story while choosing a different path for yourself. To truly honor a parent is not to drown in the same waters they drowned in. It is to learn to swim and perhaps even to build a boat. Your mother's life is her story, with all its pain, limitations, and missed opportunities. Your life is another story. You carry her in your blood, but you are not required to carry her suffering as a destiny. The most powerful way to respect her is to use the life she gave you to grow, to create, to love, and to become who you really are. This is not betrayal. This is evolution. One of the strongest steps in this evolution is what many psychologists call reparenting yourself, becoming the parent you never had. This does not mean rejecting your mother or pretending she doesn't matter. It means recognizing that the inner child inside you still has needs. The need for safety, for validation, for affection, for being seen and heard. Instead of waiting for someone else to finally meet those needs perfectly, you begin to take responsibility for them. You learn to offer yourself the things that were missing. This might sound abstract, but it is actually very concrete. Self-reparenting looks like pausing when you feel overwhelmed and asking, what am I really feeling right now? Instead of automatically shaming yourself for being too sensitive. It looks like holding space for your own sadness and fear, instead of immediately distracting yourself or pushing your emotions down. It looks like speaking to yourself in a kinder voice. When you fail, saying, okay, you made a mistake, but you're still worthy, you are still loved, rather than attacking yourself for not being perfect. It looks like setting boundaries with people who drain you or disrespect you, even if that feels scary, because you now see yourself as someone worth protecting. It looks like giving yourself permission to rest without calling yourself lazy, to say no without drowning in guilt, to choose relationships where you feel respected rather than simply tolerated. Reparenting is not a passive process. It is not just thinking positively or repeating affirmations while your nervous system remains in survival mode. It's an active, courageous, disciplined path. It requires that you look honestly at your patterns, that you admit the ways in which you abandon yourself, that you learn new ways of coping that do not involve self-hatred or self-betrayal. Sometimes it means seeking therapy, joining support groups, reading, journaling, and practicing new responses again and again until your body slowly learns that it is safe to exist without constant self-attack. Each time you choose a kinder thought, a healthier boundary, or a more honest conversation, you are, in a sense, rewriting the script your inner mother image has been reading from for years. Healing, then, is not about erasing the past. You cannot go back and delete what happened. You cannot give your younger self a different childhood. But you can refuse to let that past continue to rule your future. You can decide that while the child you were did not have power, the adult you are now does. You are no longer trapped in that house, that dynamic, that helpless position. Today, you have choices, even if they are difficult, even if they require time and courage. Emotional adulthood begins when you stop waiting for someone else to change so that you can finally feel okay. It begins when you accept that your freedom cannot depend on another person's apology, transformation, or approval. One of the biggest myths of healing is the idea that everything will change in one dramatic moment. One conversation, one confrontation, one breakdown followed by breakthrough. In reality, healing usually happens in thousands of small, almost invisible choices. The choice to pause instead of explode. The choice to feel your feelings instead of numbing them. The choice to speak to yourself with respect instead of cruelty. The choice to walk away from a situation that repeats the same old wound, even if a part of you wants to stay because it feels familiar. The choice to let someone love you in a healthy way, even though you are terrified they will abandon you. These small decisions, repeated over time, slowly rewire your inner world. To step into this process, you will need to question some deeply rooted beliefs. For example, the belief that you're only valuable when you are useful, productive, or pleasing others. The belief that your needs are always secondary. The belief that conflict means rejection, that saying no makes you unlovable, or that rest must always be earned. These beliefs did not appear out of nowhere. They were shaped by the emotional climate of your childhood, by the way your mother and other caregivers related to themselves and to you. But just because they are old does not mean they are true. You can challenge them. You can update them, like outdated software. If you look closely, you may see that the inner mother image you carry is made of many things. Your mother's wounds, her culture, her own childhood, her unprocessed pain, and your interpretations as a child who did not have the full picture. As you grow, you can begin to separate yourself from this image, to see it as one version of mother, not the absolute truth about love, worth, or safety. You can begin to imagine and then embody a different kind of inner mother, one who is firm but kind, who encourages growth but does not demand perfection, who listens without immediately judging, who can say, "I'm proud of you," even when you haven't done anything impressive by society's standards. And this brings us back to where we started, forgiveness. To forgive, in this context, does not necessarily mean you agree with everything that happened or pretend it didn't hurt. It does not mean you open the door to more harm or return to unhealthy dynamics. Forgiveness of the inner mother image means loosening the grip of those old programs on your present life. It means no longer letting that internalized voice define your value. It means understanding that your real battle is not with your mother as a person, but with the inherited patterns that have lived unexamined inside you. When you begin to transform those patterns, you're not only freeing yourself, you are also freeing future generations from repeating the same story. So, this is the invitation. For your own freedom, you can choose to stop carrying the old script as if it were the only possible story. You can choose to turn toward that inner mother voice, even if it feels harsh, cold, or demanding, and say, "I hear you. I see where you came from, but I am not a child anymore. I am allowed to write something new. You can begin to ask yourself different questions. What would it look like to protect my own heart today? What would it mean to treat myself as someone worth loving? What if I no longer needed to suffer in order to prove my loyalty to my family? Your life is not over. Your identity is not fixed. You're not doomed to forever relive the emotional climate of your childhood. You're allowed to step out of invisible loyalty and into conscious choice. You are allowed to honor your mother and your ancestors without copying their pain. You are allowed to become a different kind of inner parent to yourself. Healing begins the moment you realize that the power is no longer out there in someone else's hands. It is in how you speak to yourself tonight before you fall asleep. It is in how you respond to your own mistakes tomorrow. It is in whether you decide to keep repeating the same patterns unconsciously or to slowly, patiently, bravely build a new inner order. And maybe, as you walk this path, one day you will look at your reflection and see not just the child of your mother, but the adult who chose to transform, the one who broke the cycle, the one who loved themselves enough to say, the story continues from here, but it does not have to continue in the same way. That is where true healing begins, not by fixing the world outside, but by creating a new, kinder, wiser world within.